Over the Christmas holidays, a grandfather brought his visiting grandson to church. Apparently, the little boy hadn't been to church very often, and so he had lots and lots of questions. Why do the people say, "Thanks be to God," after someone has read from the big Bible? Grandpa replies, because they're saying thank you to God for all the good news that is written about in the Bible. And why do people stand to sing? Says the little boy. Because they can sing better standing and as a sign of respect, answers Grandpa. And what does it mean when the minister takes his watch off and puts it on the pulpit? Absolutely nothing, son. Absolutely nothing, replies Grandpa. We have many, many questions, some of great significance and some scarcely of any consequence. Some of these questions may be about this or that aspect of the liturgy, or perhaps about key days in the church calendar. And one of these could even be about the meaning of Epiphany. This is Epiphany Sunday. What does Epiphany mean? A number of you may know this already, that Epiphany means revelation. It means a showing, a direction for our search. And interestingly enough, the scriptures imply it's a search that everyone should make. Luke, in his gospel, has the poor searching in the form of the shepherds. And Matthew, in his gospel, has the learned and rich searching in the form of the Magi. So the message is that there is room for everyone in this search, from people with no degrees to those with PhDs, from shepherds to executives. And so to the Magi, they are three searchers who did not find the answers to life in their horoscopes, but took a long and difficult journey to another country in search of the Christ. Now, we're used to that story, but you have to appreciate the decision that they made. And to help us appreciate that decision, the gospel gives us two sets of wise men for contrast. The first set are the ones that we call the Magi. They have those lovely medieval names, which they were given about the 8th century, of Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. I think I've pronounced them correctly. But there was a second group of wise men. And these were the ones that Herod called in, the scribes and the Pharisees. And Herod said to them, I've got a problem here. And when you've got a problem, you call in the experts. And so Herod gathered these wise men together and said, they talk of the birth of a Messiah. I want to know where he is to be born. And so these wise men, of course, came up with the answer. And they said, he's going to be born in Bethlehem of Judea. And that's all we hear about this group of wise men. Except when this story is told, we never hear of those particular wise men. Why is that? Well, like so many people, and unlike the Magi, their hearts did not follow their heads. They gave lip service and head service. You know, like, I've got to look into this God question someday. I've got to try and figure out life's meaning someday. I've got to be kinder and more forgiving someday. Life is fundamentally not about possessions, and I've got to remember that someday. So this second group of wise men stayed aloof from life, from risk. And there was a risk, because after all, suppose that they had gone in the journey and had found the Messiah, what changes would they have had to make in their lives? And so they preferred to talk about all of this rather than to do something about it. And then we have the first group, the Magi, the ones who took a risk. And it was a risk. There was a risk of inquiry. Who knew what they might meet? And the risk of search. Who knew what they might find? Or better still, whom they might find? That was the risk of the journey. And that's why the gospel that we heard today is very challenging. It's not just a pretty story that conjures up in our minds Oriental kings floating over the desert sands on the way to Bethlehem. The gospel is really saying something to us, and that basically is a challenge. We're asked to choose between the two types of magi, the two kinds of wise men, those who play it safe and those who take the risk, those who sit around and talk about it and become holier, better, deeper, and more profound in their love of God, and those who do something about it. And so that's why there's a question that's hooked up into this gospel. And the question is, what about you and what about me? Where do we fit into this story, in this Epiphany feast? Well, the first thing that's very valuable that we can say, I think, is that we're part of a community, a church, or as they used to say, a caravan, which isn't what we think of a caravan today, but a group of people moving together. There's a great wisdom in that, and we should be reminded of that great wisdom that we're showing in being part of that caravan, because no one on this entire earth can successfully journey alone. We need each other's guidance, we need each other's balance, and we need each other's encouragement. And second, the idea that we're on a common journey also helps us to realize that we're in different spaces on this journey. Some of us are way up front, and some of us are in the rear. Some of us are willing, and some of us are foot dragging. And some of us journey with great certainty. Oh, they found Jesus, they know what it's all about. And others journey with great doubt. They're still trying to struggle with fundamental questions of sickness and death, and hurt and broken relationships, and all the things that say that there cannot possibly be a God if God is the one who allows babies to be born with AIDS or babies to be born with cancer. We have those who are veterinary seekers and those who are just newcomers to this convoy, to this caravan. I don't think that's important where we are in the caravan. I just think it's important that we're journeying at all, which means that at least we've responded to the gospel. We're taking the risk. And I think that's the best part of this Feast of Epiphany. And that's the best part of this caravan, this community, this church. Because those amongst us who are vigorous can support those of us who are tired and just plainly discouraged. And those of us who are so certain can encourage those of us who are struggling with doubts about God, about life, about love. And those of us who are devout can be assigned to those of us who are tepid and lukewarm. So to me, today, Epiphany is a feast of hope. You give me courage as I hope I give you courage. You encourage my faith when I'm weak, and vice versa. We are all part of the caravan. We're all on a journey together.